Hey everybody, it's Anna. So I wanted to share with you a few of my thoughts for this Sunday's sermon, in which I'm focusing on the prophet Isaiah in one of his songs, which is about doing something new. Basically, God is doing something new and getting ready and the singing a new song, recognizing the song that's being created and that all of creation is singing it, the sea is singing it, the sky is singing it, and basically inviting us to recognize the song and join in. So this is paired with a passage from Luke because that's where we are in the lectionary. And it's the passage in Luke, which I'm not using this Sunday. I'm going to refer to it, but I'm not going to read it all the way because, anyway, the reason is because it's about all the bad things that are going to be happening. Basically saying, yes, there's going to be trials and tribulations and wars, and you're going to be persecuted, and all the stuff. Now, the central lesson of the Luke passage is saying, don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. Don't plan for it. Kind of just be in the present moment. God will give you the words if you are being persecuted. God will open the path. So I think ultimately the message from Luke is everything's going to be fine. It's the same message as from Isaiah, which is a new thing is happening. So don't get distracted by the old thing. War, conflict, struggle, dualism, that is an old story. It's as old as the earth. It is the story of survival. Don't get caught up in that story because I am doing something new. There is another story happening at the same time, and it is a story of newness and expansion. And if you get too caught up in preparing for the disaster, you're going to miss the new story. So I decided to use the Five of Wands to illustrate this. So the number 5 connects to challenge and opportunity. So it's the point in your journey where you basically have to commit. I describe it physically or image wise as sort of you're going up a mountain, right? And right here at the top of the mountain, it gets the hardest, and you have to either hit the gas or hit the brakes. Right? If you hit the gas, you make it over the top of the mountain, and now you're on the other side, and now gravity's going to help you go the rest of the way. But if you hit the if you hit the brakes, or if you just don't hit the gas, you'll slide back down the mountain and you'll have to kind of work your way up again. So the 5 is the point where you have to decide. You're basically past the point of no return if you go past this, right? So there often is hesitation around the 5. And you may have to come to the 5 point several times before you're just resolved to hit that gas and go past it. Wands are connected to the element of fire, so they're about feeling confident and inspired and engaged. So this image shows 5 youths who have wands and they're sparring together. And so you read this card differently depending on how you tell the story, okay? So this might be a story of conflict. They're struggling against each other. They're trying to best each other. In which case, this could be a very confrontational card. Like you're being pushed on and it's assaulted and you have to, get stronger. Okay. That's fine if that's your story, right? That's a very old story. That's the story of survival and competition. That is not the story that I use to orient myself in the world. So I don't read that card with this card with that story. I read it with a story of cooperation. So what I see are youths sparring together. They're making each other stronger. They're challenging each other. And because of this engagement, they're able to push each other over the top of that mountain, right? So if you think about children wrestling together or people playing sports together in a friendly way, they may be playing with all of their heart. In fact, if they really love what they're doing, they do play and they make each other better and better. And so I see this challenge here is, are you willing to throw yourself all the way in to this engagement? Basically, Wands is about passion and inspiration and confidence. It's a very, very high momentum energy. And high momentum makes the mind nervous because the mind, when it's being survival motivated, which it's what it's built to do, we have to train it to do something else. It wants to be cautious. It wants to be able to go slow enough to make plans to not go so fast. So it's very often that when we get into the middle of passion and inspiration and we don't know where it's going, we're trusting the flow of the energy itself, the mind will get scared and it might hold back here. So it's kind of like one foot in, one foot out. I'm engaged, but sort of disengaged at the same time. I have definitely had that experience myself. Anyone who's a creative or a manifester has had that sort of wobbly feeling of, I kind of want to do it, I kind of don't want to do it, right? So this card invites you to recognize you're at that decision point. Is your mind ready to let off the brakes and just let your passion fly, let this challenge surface it in you and kind of tip over the top of the mountain and kind of commit to the rest of the journey? Or is your mind still in reservation? And so the way the mind gets ready for this is about how we tell the story. It's about the mind learning how to pivot in the story. It is very regularly getting a story, the old story from the world around us. It's the story of competition and struggle, and these are your enemies, fight your enemies, which is sort of how the passage in Luke starts off. Yes, bad things are happening, wars and persecutions. And so all of that stuff makes the mind very concerned and nervous, right? So the mind's getting, oh no, I better brace for this. I better prepare for this. Then the rest of the passages don't prepare for this. Ignore it, or do something else. When the time comes, you'll be ready. And I think this, agreeing to this challenge, letting yourself be kind of hiked over this mountain, is telling the mind, yes, things are moving quickly, but when the challenges come, we're going to be ready for them. We're going to know what to do in that moment, not before, but in the moment we will find the genius, the capacity, the support of the universe to bring us through. That is walking in faith. And so for the mind to walk in faith, we have to really coach the mind in the story of faith. So I was inspired this week by something I saw on some social media. I don't know which outlet it was, but it was a Halloween video, and it was a child. So there was a ring cam. A lot of people have ring cams on their front doors, and this child was trick or treating, and he came to the bucket. I guess they just had candy sitting out. So he came to the bucket, and there were 2 pieces of candy left. This child is so precious, by the way. The story makes him more precious, but he looks in the container, and he tells his dad, "Oh, there's only 2 pieces left." And he contemplates for a minute, and he says, "I guess I'll take the Skittles." Now, from the way he said he'll take the Skittles, that I don't think that's his favorite candy. So he's like, "Well, I'll just take the Skittles." He takes the Skittles, puts them in his bag, which is a big bag of candy. He's been working hard trick-or-treating. He leaves. Then a second later, he comes back, and he takes candy out of his bag and puts it in the empty bucket. And I thought, wow, what a great pivot. What a great shift of story. Because the first story is, we're almost out of candy, and I've got this choice, and it's not an ideal choice. There's 2 candies. Maybe I'm not too excited by either one. I guess I'll settle for one of these candies. Then the story shifts into, you know what? I've got a lot of extra candy. I could just share some of my candy for other trick-or-treaters who are going by. So this kind of challenge of scarcity and competition, we'll pick which one you want of the candies you don't really like, shifts into, hey, I could experience abundance and freedom and the resilience of the mind saying, yeah, I can do something different. So I love that illustration of this child shifting the story in the middle. And how that, and the reason it works is because he's a child, and a child's mind is more limber than an adult's mind, right? It doesn't have a lot of rules, doesn't have a lot of regulations, doesn't know what you're supposed to do or not supposed to do. So it's much more likely to walk in faith, just to follow an instinct. So what happened was his instinct said, you know what? I've got lots of candy. I can share. He didn't think, I'm going to run out of candy. It won't be enough. He didn't think in terms of, competition. He thought in terms of this sort of commitment to passion. And so I love that as an illustration for us, because in order for our minds to walk in faith, we have to actively keep them limber. The longer you live, the more the mind has data that tells it certain things, and it can get more and more distracted. On the other hand, if your mind has been trained into this other story of possibility and excitement, and it's watching for it, it's training for it, it gets support when it begins to get caught in the other story, and you bring it back. If the mind gets that kind of support, this becomes its new story, and it becomes more and more masterful about this. So I think you've got this, the journey we have from the child to the adult to the elder, right? And the reason the elder position is so potentially so beautiful is that if you go start with this child who has no experience and is just sort of moving on intuition alone, you go through the adult version of following the rules and engaging the story outside yourself. And then as an elder, you get to decide. You get to decide if you're going to continue in the story of your adulthood and kind of not just be very predictable and regular, or you in your adulthood you discover that this story is limiting. It's not what you want to, not how you want to live. It doesn't feel life-giving to you, and you begin to nurture the other story, which is the story you remember from your childhood. You begin to adopt that, and then you step into that from a place of groundedness, a place of great stability, because you are older now. You're not a child, and so you can bring all of this gravitas and power with it. And so the elders that have inspired me and changed my life are the ones that went back to the magic of their childhood stories and committed there and brought all of their energy, all of their, and trained their minds to that story so that their mind is on board for this. The mind is ready to take on the new adventure, ready to let passion lead and trust that on the other side, we're going to figure that out. And I think when you're older, your mind has proved itself enough times that it begins to trust its own mastery. Not that it knows where we're going, but it believes that it can figure it out with the support of the intuition and the soul's guidance. It can land, it can stick the landing on the other side. And so it's more ready to do that. So yeah, those are my thoughts for this week. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time. Bye.